Now get the out of here.
Hello, I'm Seth, the topless editor-in-chief for Forbidden Origins Comics, and I want to take something back. After the release of Superman, I mentioned that I didn't want Robert Pattinson's Batman to be the DCU Batman, because I wanted somebody that encompasses like an older Batman, something more cartoonish, something more comic booky than the Batmans we've seen in the past, and I thought that Andy Muschietti's Batman and Robin would be a perfect place to debut a new Batman with that new cartoony aesthetic, or at least more comic booky aesthetic than the ones previously, and it would be fun to see that Batman bounce off of Corn Sweat Superman. Well, with the release of Welcome to Derry, I don't want Andy Muschietti fucking touching Batman. And here's the thing, I was an Andy Muschietti defender. A lot of people were like, why the fuck would we give this guy a Batman after he directed The Flash? And I was thinking like, oh, a lot of the problems with The Flash was because it was like a film in development hell for like 20, 30 fucking years. The universe that it was going to be in was dying. It was going to be the last film in it. At the last second, they had to shove in a bunch of shit in order to, change the ending and make it like, oh, this is the finale of the universe, right? And so I just assumed that most of what was wrong with that movie was because of Warner Brothers and not Andy. Like, the CGI in The Flash is absolutely atrocious. It's utterly ugly to fucking look at. And I just assumed that was because VFX artists were crunched to such an extreme degree, and like they weren't able to pre-visit correctly because like maybe the sequence was previs 20 directors ago, like 15 years ago, and Warner Brothers is like, just pretty this up, shove that shit out there. I assume that was the case. And then when Andy Muschietti defended the film afterwards, he was like, oh, well, the CGI is supposed to look bad because that's how the Speed Force interacts with reality, so that's how we see it. I assume that was his way of walking the line between like not throwing the VFX artists under the bus and not shit talking his bosses who are going to give him a Batman. I assume that he was like just playing the middle ground. But after watching the first 3 episodes of Welcome to Derry, no, that is just how that man uses CG. And it should have been quite apparent because a lot of the CGI in the original It doesn't look particularly great either. I mean, like, there are some moments like painting come to life, so that's fine. Fast forward to Welcome to Derry, and the opening scene kind of fucking blows, right? It's the hitchhiking scene where the kid, he gets taken by this weirdo family, and he's like, send me to any place that isn't Derry. And they're like, well, guess what? We're all it, so we're going to kill you instead. It starts off with like kind of weird comedy, like how the family is like super chipper despite the fact that the kids are just being weird as shit. And you're like, okay, they're building to something here. And then she starts giving birth. And guess what? I'm going to be a parent very, very soon. So this should have been effective for me, but it wasn't, because what came out was like this weird demon baby that you saw all of, that the camera fucking loves. It shows you every piece of that fucking demon baby and goes like, look at what we've made. And it's like, it's ugly. It doesn't look like it belongs there. And so it's just going around screaming, going like, it's not effective as a scare, because we're seeing so much of it. We understand that it's a cartoon. And all 3 of these episodes have this not only over-reliance on CGI, but this indulgent need to videotape every piece of like that weird CGI thing and go like, look at it, isn't it scary? When it's not, because you're like, oh, I've registered that it's a cartoon, so now I'm supposed to be scared that these fucking cartoons are chasing real people. And this isn't exactly an anti-CGI video. Almost every film you've seen for the past 15, 20 years has had some amount of CG in it. The fucking Zodiac Killer movie, if you watch that, almost half the backgrounds are CGI. Even the ones where Mark Ruffalo is standing like right in the middle of the frame, that background's CGI. CGI has been used effectively for a long time now, and I guarantee you didn't notice most of it. So I'm not here to say like, oh no, all CGI is bad, all practical is good. Even though I generally do prefer practical effects over CGI, I don't have a problem with CGI. I watched Marvel, I love Superman. CGI is fine, especially if used correctly, if used in a way like the director understands how VFX works. I'm absolutely 100% fine with CGI, even in horror. And effectiveness is the key word here, because your suspension of disbelief can be easily broken with a supernatural horror film, because your brain has to recognize that whatever spooky shit is happening to the actors. And when it's bad CGI, your brain is like, that's not happening to the actors. But if it's like a practical effect, if it's a puppet, if it's a statue, if it's like this vast set or something, you're like, that is happening in the same room as the actors are standing in, right? And I know this isn't a fair comparison. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein just came out on Netflix, and there's a lot of CGI in that film, but too many people can't can't tell. In fact, a lot of people are like, oh, 95% of that film is practical. No, a bit less than that, let's say. Definitely all the animals are CGI. That one's made obvious, but, you know, you can't really use animals as much in film now as you used to be able to, you know, because it's kind of abusive. So, yeah, that's fine. All animals are going to be CG from now on. That's just the way the world is. But aside from that, like, a lot of the CGI is used to enhance the story, enhance the storytelling. We either come away from it just believing the CGI wholeheartedly, or we don't give a fuck. And if you look at Crimson Peaks, a lot of those ghosts are practical effects, like practically made up actors, enhanced with CGI in order to give them like this otherworldly mix of like, oh, that's happening, but something's not quite right here. And it ends up becoming effective, right? But then when you watch like It, and the fucking, the lamp turns into this weird skin thing, and the camera is just like zooming in and out on the fucking lamp over and over again, so you see the whole thing. You see the whole thing, and it's fake. It's fake. Well, then you become fucking exhausted of it. You're looking at that thing going like, that fucking thing ain't there. And episode 2 has a more effective version of that scare, when Veronica, has that dream, like, based on the fact that her mother died in childbirth. And she's like pulling on the blanket, and then it becomes skin. And she's like, what the fuck is happening? That's effective. And then the thing gives birth, and you're like, okay, yeah, it's getting there. And then the mother, like, she looks like she's a part of the bedspread because of how the scene is shot. She kind of like blends in on the background with like all her clothes and shit. But then like her arms move, and you're like, oh, that's not the headboard. I thought that was a headboard. It's not. It's her actual arms. She's like reaching out now. And then fucking mouth, a fucking CGI mouth comes out, and you're like, oh my God, you were so close to being effective. But now it becomes like, oh, this shit isn't real anymore. And because of Andy Muschietti's like weird inclinations and his instincts, he just zooms in on the fucking mouth over and over again. And you're like, oh my God, I know it's a weird spooky mouth that isn't there. And that's another thing about Andy Muschiett's directorial style, is that he reminds me of like a mid-2000s horror film director, in that it's very overproduced and it's very loud with obvious like sound cues in order to be like, be scared now, be scared, be scared. It's just too much and too obvious to be scary. It's like when your child is running around your house and then he just screams boo, boo, like every 5 seconds at you, trying to scare you, and then you have to be like, oh my God, you scared me. But it's like a 40-year-old man doing that to you, and it's like, just shut the fuck up, man. If you want an example of what I'm talking about, watch the movie Pulse. You've probably seen that one video by Spikema Movies talking about that one scene, like the scariest scene he's ever seen in like a J-horror film. And it's a very simple scene of like a woman walking down a hallway. It has no effects, and she's just walking weird. And you're like, that, something doesn't seem right. The fucking framing of the shot is weird. So you're like, everything about this is putting me off. The music starts from like this low hum all the way to this like building crescendo, building. And it doesn't like, it just keeps going. And it's like something bad is happening. Something very fucked up is happening. And then you compare that scene to the scene in the remake, the American remake in 2006, and they've added so many effects to it. They've added all this noise and random shit to go like, isn't this scary? Isn't this spooky? And you're like, no, it's not anymore, because you're doing too much. And thankfully, like, a lot of horror films in the West have gravitated towards the former, towards Pulse, over the remake of Pulse, where it's a lot more like, I'm just going to set some scary shit up. You're going to see some shit in the background. I'm not going to point out anything. The music isn't going to go like, bah! Whenever a scare happens. However, Andy Muschietti is stuck in that mid-2000s, like, Western American filmmaking of horror, where it's like, I have to tell you that this is scary so that you can be scared, right? That's how directors communicate their ideas, right? And it just doesn't work. And in his It films, that happens all the time, where, like, scenes that would be effective are kind of like taken back, because every time a scare happens, it goes, bah, bah, bah. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I know it's happening now. It's like you get used to all the sensory information. And you're like, okay, just do whatever. I'm just here watching. The grocery scene is like another example of like a scene that gets fucking ruined by like this self-indulgent need to like stare at the CG thing you've made. And it sucks so much. Because like it starts out with like everybody in the store kind of following her around. And it's kind of silly, but like there's like some interesting filmmaking going on with like all the aisles like sliding to close her in, and like you can see what's happening but she has no clue, so it's kind of scary. But then it focuses on the fucking CGI pickles and you're like, well, that's not a thing, that's not real, that's not happening there, that's not in front of you, you're obviously like not in reality. Another aspect is he doesn't seem to have a grasp on how to balance comedy and scares at all. So you come away from scenes going like, how should I feel about this? And it's like, I've seen Evil Dead. I've seen Sam Raimi. I've seen James Gunn. I've seen all these fucking horror directors that also do comedy sometimes at the same time. I don't come away from their movies confused, being like, how should I feel about this? But whenever I see like an Andy Muschietti scene, I'm like, did he want me to laugh? I don't know, because I'm laughing. I'm not scared. And then like when you combine all these aspects, the inability to balance comedy and horror, the inability to frame CGI in a way that's pleasant, it's like, oh, you want to give this guy a Batman? That doesn't seem right. And I don't want to blame him too much for the plot stuff, because like other people are writing pretty much everything he's done. I don't think he wrote The Flash. I don't think he wrote the It movies. He didn't write this. Somebody else's name comes up a lot. He might have had story input, but he didn't write it. So I'm not going to blame him completely for that. But a lot of his work seemed to center around nostalgia. And in the Flash movie, all of his Batman stuff revolved around Tim Burton. But even then, it was only like certain pieces of iconography that wasn't the Tim Burton Batman, despite being Michael Keaton. It seems very purely aesthetic. Are we going to get Tim Burton Batman again? But like just his aesthetic without any of Tim Burton's like anything else he does well? It's just going to be, oh, here is some gothic architecture, but kind of soulless because I'm doing this from memory and not because like this is how I actually am inside. That's what scares me about his Batman. Whoever directs Batman should have a vision. They should have their idea for what a Batman is, what a Batman means, what his world looks like, and how the world views him. Matt Reeves has a solid vision of his Batman. Christopher Nolan had a solid vision of his Batman. Tim Burton, solid vision of his Batman. But when you use like this workman, like he's Batman, he punch, you lose a lot. And there's so much Batman out there that we're going to compare it to much better things. So yeah, at first I was like, oh, I do not want Robert Pattinson to be the Batman of this universe because we've gotten so many young Batmans. But now I'm like, please use him. Otherwise, we're getting something much worse. I want to see more comic booky world. I want to see Nightwing. I want to see Damian, even though I don't like Damian. I want to see a Batman that has moved past the initial stages of early hood Batman, where he's meeting the Joker for the first time, where he's meeting Two-Face for the first time, where he's learning to balance his life as Bruce Wayne and Batman. I want to see a more complete Batman. But if that means we're getting Muschietti's Batman, I'd rather not have it. And the unfortunate thing for me, at least, is that I seem to be in the fucking minority on this issue. I've only now seen detractors after episode 3 released and that horrible, horrible, horrible cemetery scene happened. I'm starting to see people be like, oh, is this show ugly? Apparently, people loved The Flash, despite it being the ugliest film I've ever seen with the most offensive parade of corpses finale I've ever seen. And people love the It movies. So it might just be inevitable that this man is like, I am the popcorn director and here is my Batman. And everyone's going to be like, oh, this is great. And I'm going to be sitting there in the theater going like, oh man, this is fucking ugly. And like, I already made a video talking about how some parts of Superman just do not look good because it has that weird free floating fucking camera. But that's all of Andy Muschietti. He's only that camera. So I'm fucked on this. Maybe one day he'll release something that's like truly so bad that people are going like, oh, wait a minute. And then like start reevaluating his work. It's like, oh, the signs have always been there. Maybe not. We'll see. Hopefully the rumors are true and they are trying to get Matt Reeves as Batman in the DCU. We'll see. Anyway, I'm Seth, the topless editor-in-chief for Forbidden Origins Comics. We have a new comic coming out called Accursed Beginnings. It's an origin story for the old universe. My comic already has 2 issues out. It's called These Lies End in Death. You can pick them up. We're starting a store on our website, so please pick it up there. We're trying to separate ourselves from Amazon. All right, so have a good day. Good luck, have Batman.